All right. Is this good?
Yes, ma'am. May I please the court? Before you, are we ready to proceed?
We are ready to proceed.
Okay. Good morning, Your Honor. May it please the court. Before you is Ariel Robinson. She is charged with homicide by child abuse under warrant 2021 A23320400037. I'm Christy Sexton-Kovich for the state. Ms. Robinson is represented by Bill Boughton. This defendant has been bond, Your Honor. Her attorney is requesting a $40,000 surety bond at this time.
All right.
May I put a brief factual summary on the record?
Please.
Okay. Your Honor, on January 14, 2021, around 2:30 p.m., police responded to 515 Selwood Circle within Greenville County in reference to a non-responsive 3-year-old little girl. EMS and firefighters were already on the scene, and when officers got there, they were informed that the victim, 3-year-old Victoria Rose Smith, whose nickname is Tori, was not doing well. The victim had been placed in foster care, Your Honor, with this defendant and her husband, Jerry Austin Robinson, by the Department of Social Services in early March of 2020, along with her 2 biological brothers, who were 7 and 6 years of age at the time, Judge. The biological mother in this case had relinquished her rights to the children, and this defendant and her husband were fostering to adopt all 3. Back to the facts, Judge. This defendant told first responders that Tori had drowned by drinking too much water. But firefighters could also see unexplained excessive bruising on her body, deep purple bruising on her abdomen, Judge, bruising on her ear, abrasions on her face, bruising down her back, and up and down both legs. Police talked with this defendant to get an account of what Tori's day was like, Judge, on January 13th and then the 14th, leading up to when this defendant, the co-defendant, called 911. This defendant told police that the night before, Tori had thrown up on the way to church, but that after that they went home, she had no real issues, and that she went to sleep. Then the next morning, this defendant says that Tori ate pancakes. While she and her husband, this defendant and her husband, were home alone with the child, and the other 4 boys, this defendant's 2 other biological children, and Tori's brothers, all went to school. She outlined for police that Tori started asking for more water, Judge, and that the co-defendant filled up her cup several times. This defendant said that the victim started saying her stomach hurt and that she was cold. That's when this defendant said she gave Tori a heated blanket and was holding Tori when the child went limp. This defendant says at that point, Your Honor, that she performed the Heimlich maneuver on Tori, believing that she was choking. This defendant told police that didn't appear to work, and she began to press on Tori's stomach and told her husband to call 911. The defendant said that she was told to move Tori to the floor, Judge, and begin CPR until firefighters arrived. The lead detective on the scene, investigator Scott McGraw, began to ask additional questions about the extensive bruising that was all over Tori's body, and asked this defendant, how did that get there? As to the abdominal injuries, this defendant stated, quote, I did that. And then she also said, quote, I was pushing really hard. The officer continued to ask about the extensive bruising up and down her back, her body, and both legs. This defendant then stated that the victim's 7-year-old biological brother had anger issues and had caused those injuries. The officer asked what a 7-year-old could possibly use to cause such extreme bruising, and this defendant stated he'll pick up anything and hit her. The victim died later that day, Judge, and an autopsy was conducted by Dr. Michael Ward, Chief Medical Examiner for Greenville County. Dr. Ward determined that Tori died from multiple blunt force trauma and that the manner of death is homicide. After leaving the autopsy, law enforcement went to Bethel Elementary School, spoke to the principal about Tori's biological 7-year-old brother, that this defendant had claimed caused injuries to Tori, and the principal described him as a happy, smaller child with no outward signs of physical abuse towards anyone. Judge, this victim had no known health problem. She was in the sole custody and care of this defendant and her husband, Jerry Austin Robinson. Several days after the arrest of both of these defendants, Judge, Mr. Robinson's attorney contacted the state and said that his client wished to make a statement. Austin Robinson told police that he had not physically ever hurt Tori, but that this defendant would, quote, spank and beat her with different things, including a belt, paddle, flip-flop, or whatever. The interview was 2 hours and wide-ranging, Your Honor. But as to the actual injuries for Tori, he stated that this defendant beat Tori with a belt, that he was outside and he could hear it. When he came inside, he saw the bruising and looked at Ariel and said, "You've gone too far." He said that they put Tori in an Epsom salt bath. And he says he went to CVS to try to buy some medication for Tori to bring down the bruising. Your Honor, law enforcement did secure surveillance video, and it does show Jerry Austin Robinson buying that medication around 1. EMS was called to the residence roughly around 2 p.m., Judge. This is an active investigation, and at the time of Tori's death, Judge, she had not been formally adopted yet. She was under DSS care. The final adoption hearing for Tori was actually set for January 19th, 2021, and that hearing never happened. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that the state would like to speak at this
Your
hearing?
Honor, is this the appropriate time to put victim input on the record?
Certainly.
Judge, because Tori was in DSS custody, DSS has been notified of this hearing and they are observing it. The biological mother of the victim in this case is present, and she is seen with her attorney, Jake Irwin. Her name is Cassie Ferris, and I do believe she wanted to address the court. The solicitor's office has made that available for her if she would like to say anything.
Mr. Irwin, would your client care to say anything?
Yes, ma'am, just briefly.
Certainly. Yes, ma'am.
And Judge, for the record, this is Casey Fair.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Casey.
Your Honor, Representative Casey Bass.
Ma'am, could I stop you for just a moment? Mr. Irwin, with your permission, could your client remove her mask?
Yeah, that'd be fine.
So we can make sure we can hear her. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, I'm Casey Ferris. On Thursday, January the 14th of 2021, 3-year-old daughter Victoria Rose was taken from this earth. My family and I have been devastated by her passing, and it's because of this that we respectfully request that you deny bond for the defendant.
Well, thank you so much for being here, ma'am, and I'm just so sorry for your loss, and my condolences to you and your family.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Ms. Sustakovich, you were muted at that time. Is there anything else that the state would like to present?
I just wanted to note that the 2 lead officers on this case, Flood Agent Charlene Ezell and also Investigator Scott McGaw, are present. Your Honor, the state is requesting no bond in this case.
All right, thank you. And thank law enforcement for being here. Mr. Boughton?
Court, can you hear me okay?
We can now hear you. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Bill Boughton for Ariel Robinson today. Your Honor, I'm here with Alvin and Sharon Payne, who are Ms. Robinson's parents. Also sitting with us today is Alicia Ratliff, who is Ms. Robinson's sister. Your Honor, we're all very sorry to be here under these tragic circumstances. Our hearts break for Tori and for all those that loved her. But we are requesting a bond today, respectfully asking you to consider setting a bond for Ms. Robinson. Your Honor, she's 29 years old. She's lived her entire life in Greenville County in the upstate. She's a graduate from Lander University with a degree in communications. She also holds a master's degree in education from Clemson University. She was a middle school teacher from 2016 to 2019 here in the upstate. She had been the children's director at her church for 7 years. She was an assistant coach for an upstate middle school basketball team. She volunteered as a coach at the YMCA in Simpsonville for a couple of years. She was, until recently, on the PTA board at an upstate elementary school here in Greenville County. She's volunteered at career fairs, character building workshops at 2 different schools in the upstate. Your Honor, essentially, she's been heavily involved in the community her entire life. She does not own a passport, Judge. Her family has lived here in the upstate for about 30 years. Alvin Payne, her father, is a retired Army officer. Her mother, Sharon's a retired substitute teacher. They're on a fixed income currently, and certainly there's been financial stresses for them. As a result of this, they're currently have legal custody of Ms. Robinson's 2 biological children. Your Honor, her sister, Talisha, who's present, is a pharmacist. She currently works at Presbyterian College here and lives in the upstate, has her whole entire life. And Your Honor, they're here just in support of Ms. Robinson. But they're also here to ensure the court that they will assist and abide by any potential conditions that you may place on Ms. Robinson's bond if you were to grant one today. Your Honor, Ms. Robinson has no prior criminal history. She's currently been in jail for 25 days, approximately, because of this charge. And we're just asking for a reasonable secured bond to be set today, Your Honor. I know I placed a $40,000 request on my motion, and certainly that was based on the economic situation of Payne's. But we'd like you to consider whatever you think is a reasonable bond in this situation. We have no objection to electronic monitoring or home detention, should you feel that that's appropriate. Ms. Robinson understands that there are restrictions put in place by the family court regarding contact with her children, and she is prepared to comply with those. But we certainly have no objection to any extra condition of bond, be that she follow any orders of family court or other conditions that you find appropriate. The case is still in active investigation, as the solicitor said. We appreciate the information that's been quickly provided to us by Ms. Sestakovich, but certainly there are other things that we haven't received yet, and we look forward to furthering our investigation. We believe that Ms. Robinson's history and characteristics demonstrate that she is not a flight risk, nor a danger to the community. But if this court has concerns based on the serious nature of the charges, then we believe that certain conditions can be put in place that would assure her appearance in court and ensure that the community is not in any unreasonable danger. Thank you for hearing us today.
All right, thank you. Anything else, Mr. Boughton?
No, ma'am.
Anything else from the state?
Nothing further, Judge.
All right, thank you. Based on the seriousness of the charges and the egregious nature of the allegations in this case, I do find that the defendant in this case is a flight risk and does pose a substantial danger to the community, most particularly to the children who were in her custody and potentially even to herself. I do not know, but a danger to the community. And based on that, Mr. Boughton, I respectfully deny bond. All right, thank you. I'm now going to log off for about 15 minutes. I'm going to log off from the virtual courtroom for about 15 minutes, and I'll log back on at 10 o'clock. Thank you.